Hello, everybody. Hey. I hope you're having a great day. If you're here, I'm assuming you know already, but I am Hannah. I am the host of the Moody Readers Book Club. And if you're new to the Moody Readers Book Club, we read a new mood every single month. So for the mood of March, we read Mother, Daughter, Murder Night by Nina Simon, who will be joining us today. Fun fact about Nina Simon is I got to meet Nina at the Tucson Festival of Books a couple weeks ago, and I got to write a really fun little intro. So I wanted to use that same intro today in case you missed it, and I added a little pizzazz as well. All right, don't mind me, I'm not texting. I have a script. Let's see here. So introducing the incredibly versatile Nina Simon, whose resume reads like a roller coaster of creativity. From slam poet to NASA engineer, to museum director, Nina's journey to becoming a celebrated author is as fascinating as her debut novel, Mother, Daughter, Murder Night. A Reese's Book Club pick. Nina has proven that writing a novel isn't exactly rocket science, but even if it was, she could do it all. And in case somehow you're still not impressed, when Nina isn't busy conquering the world, she's often found kicking ass on the sand volleyball court. And she has the abs to prove it. Welcome, Nina.
Woo! It's so good to see you. And it's not nearly as fun as getting to be together in person, but it's almost as fun. And I'm so glad that we're here with Moody Readers Book Club folks as well.
Yay. Also, really fun, I guess I should say not so fun fact. After all of the buzz and fun of the weekend, I didn't even get you to sign my book. I was looking at the games today, and I was like, what happened? We have 5 selfies, we have all these videos, but a signature was the least of my worries. I'm like, no, I just wanted quality time. I just wanted to hug you and chat with you. Of course, I didn't think of the most obvious thing of all.
We'll hit it for the next book for sure.
Yeah, for sure. This is just beginning. This is just the beginning of the friendship. Okay, so this is kind of a new format for me, obviously for you, because you're the guest here as well. But I kind of wanted to give a little bit of that housekeeping update of how everything's going to go today, just so everyone knows what to expect. But this isn't going to be your standard author interview. I've done a lot of those. I know you've done a lot of those. And honestly, those exist online. You can Google Nina's name and find these interviews and hear a lot of these basic questions. So I wanted to make it be more about who you are and just kind of have fun for once, because I think that that's just something different that we don't really get to do very often. So we are going to start with something very, very simple and basic. And then after that, we'll get into the fun stuff. But throughout the stream today, if Nina or I want to say any spoilers, we've got a little sign that I'm going to put right here. So the entire time the spoiler alert sign is here, you know that you can actually just mute us. And when we're done spoiling, we'll put it down and then you can turn your volume back on. But I figured that's kind of a good compromise in case we want to put in some fun little nuggets in there. But then if you haven't read the book or you're planning on reading it after, now you have that excuse. That being said, now we get into the normal housekeeping stuff. If you go in the link below in the video description, I have all the links of where you can shop Nina's book and where you can add it to your want to read list. So Goodreads, Storygraph, all of that. And that is super helpful to the author. So do that. Okay, that's the boring part. And now it's time for your boring part that you've done a million times before, but you can make it exciting, is tell us about your book for those who haven't read it.
Yeah, so Mother, Daughter, Murder Night is a big-hearted mystery. It's about 3 generations of women. There's a tough grandma, a no-nonsense single mom, and then an adventurous teenage girl. And they all have to work together to solve the murder of a naturalist who washes up on their doorstep in coastal California in a marine preserve called Elkhorn Slough, which is here in the Monterey Bay where I live. And the book, I would say, is a feel-good mystery. Yes, there is murder, but there's also a lot of humor. And there's also a lot of heart in the relationship between these 3 women who are trying to renegotiate how to live together, how to love and respect each other, and how to solve a murder all at the same time.
Is that all?
Just
It's
in
also
a, just
fantastic
in
on
a
audio.
way.
Just
Yeah.
putting that out there. I am like a big audiobook nerd, and I did
Mm,
the full on like immersive read. I mean, I go a little next level when it's book club because I'm like, I'm gonna tab it, I'm gonna talk about games, I'm gonna write down discussion points. So
I
I
love
was
it.
all in, but depending on if you're wondering what format to do, I highly suggest audio. It's fantastic.
The audio is great, and I was so lucky to get to meet the narrator. It's a funny thing, right? When you write a book, when they do the audio, you don't meet the person, you don't get to talk to them about the book or how you imagine the characters. All you do is they give you a list of words that they want you to record so that they know how they're pronounced, and then they go and do their thing. And so it was super lucky that when this book was launching, I did one of my launch events in Los Angeles, and Jane Oppenheimer, who's the narrator, showed up. And I was so nervous. I was like, oh my God, I was so nervous while you were narrating the book about whether you liked it or not. And she said to me, I was so nervous about how you felt about the narration. And we just, really became very friendly with each other. And yeah, I absolutely agree that she did a terrific job.
That's so funny. It is kind of, I guess, what I picture in my brain for authors is like you get to play the voice with your audiobook narrators, and like you have your chair and you can't see what they look like, and they send you like little excerpts of your book and you're like, that's the voice. Like that's what I imagine. It's kind
Yeah.
of that.
Well, they do send you, the publisher did send me a few different options of narrators. And so I would go in and listen to samples of things they'd done. And it's funny, I have done a lot of public speaking, and there were some people, and I wrote a couple books of nonfiction, one of which I narrated. And so I had some friends who were like, oh, aren't you going to do it? And I was like, no, no, no. These people are experts. Audiobooks are at a level now. People are listening at 2x speed. Like
Yes.
there's all kinds of things going on in the voices. And so I just felt so delighted to have the opportunity to work with such a pro as Jane is.
I commend people, and I don't understand at all how people narrate their own books. I recently,
Mhm.
just for the fun of it, I'm trying like a lot of new things here on YouTube. So I went into the public domain to see what book I could read aloud and get away with without like getting sued by someone. So I ended up reading Anne of Green Gables aloud, and it took me like 10 or 11 streams that were like an hour each. Like it was ridiculously long. Also, yes, that's a children's novel, but she uses the most wordy words you could possibly think of.
Yep.
So it was like a tongue twister on every single page. And I was like, well, I guess I'm working on my dictation every single day. So
Yeah,
that was cool, but I don't know, not my thing.
Yeah.
But it was fun. All right. So kind of how it's going to work today is I have some questions, but before we, get bogged down with questions and into like the nitty gritty of getting back to that like boring old interview format, then we'll jump to a game. So we kind of get to bounce around and have a little bit of fun with both. And the games are interactive with the audience. So if you're not already logged into your YouTube, please log into your YouTube so that I can pop in your little comments like this, as you've been saying. So that's how it'll work if you want to play along with the games. All right, let me start presenting and sharing screen. 1 second here, always takes a moment. We almost had a celebrity guest on your side.
Yeah, I know. Well, I wanted to be so we live in this tiny cabin in the woods, and then this separate kitchen building, which is where I am now. And I wanted to be in the cabin with my beautiful tree bookshelf, but he was like, I'm going to clean out my closet. And I was like, I really support that. I'm leaving the room so you could do that.
That is totally fair. I get it. I am glad that my fiance left and went to work for a few hours. I was like, bye. How does everything look on your end? Just want to make sure it's good. Okay. All right. So here is our fun agenda for today. We've already started with some introductions. We've got a game of MASH. We've got a game of Guess the Character. As I mentioned, there'll be some questions for, of course, Nina. And we have a Mad Libs game as well as some time for audience Q&A. So we're going to squeeze as much in rapid fire as we can. Bear with us. The one thing we might not get to is Guess the Character. And if we don't get to it, we will still play on Instagram stories. So no stress there. All right. So starting out with a couple of fun questions. Like I said, I wanted it to get a little bit more personal.
Mhm.
So we talked about in the Tucson Festival of Books how strong these three women are. It's a grandmother, a mother, and a daughter family in this book. And they have a family motto of sorts that is, I can take care of myself.
Mhm.
So I was wondering, what would be your personal motto?
Mm. Well, unsurprisingly, the Rubicon family motto certainly came to some extent from real life and from my family. As you know, the main character, Lana, who's this very tough grandma character, was based on my own mom, who, like Lana, was this very tough businesswoman who got stage 4 cancer and then excuse me, was
Bless you.
thank you, was forced to accept care for the first time in her life. And so there's no question, my mom, my sister, myself, were all very independent. And actually, my daughter, her very first word was self. And not as she would say it like self, like, I want to do it myself. I want to get that myself. I want to go there myself.
Oh,
And so this motto is very close to my family. But I would say that my personal motto has changed a lot. I used to be very work focused, very, very driven. My motto, probably in my 30s, was something like, the most impact with the most people when I was working in nonprofits. But when my mom got sick, it fundamentally reoriented my life around care and around caregiving. And also, because it was such a hard time, it also rewired me to really seek joy. And so the personal motto that I've really been working with over the last maybe 3 years is start from joy. That I want to, start my day from a place of joy. I want to sit down to write from a place of joy. And even if I'm doing something that is challenging or frustrating, I want to enter it not out of a sense of obligation or a sense of I need to do this for some kind of external validation, but that I've chosen to do this from a starting point of joy. So it's new for me, and it's still a little uncomfortable, but that's definitely what I'm trying to lean into. And I actually have this nerdy habit of buying URLs when certain things come up for me. And so I actually
ooh.
own startfromjoy.com. And if you go there, there's like a very small website that I just made for myself when I started sort of exploring this concept. And so it's continued to be kind of a homing star for me.
Next up, a self-help book by Nina Simon. She is our new therapist because I really need to take this advice.
I have a lot more learning to do before I'm anywhere near sharing those stories. But I think, as you know a little bit about me, I mean, that I have learned life is too hard to not seize and revel in joy when it becomes available to you.
No, that makes sense. I love that. Ugh. I really could just like want to hug you. I'm like, damn it. We'll do what we can for now. All right. If you could invite any fictional characters from other books to join the Rubicon women on one of their escapades, who would you choose and why? So, any
Yeah.
character.
So I have a visual aid for this, which is a book that I just loved that I read this past year called What Happened to Ruthie Ramirez. It's by Claire Jimenez. This is a great literary novel about a mom and about the Ramirez family and about this mom and daughters, and one of the daughters goes missing as a teenager. And then the book takes place about 15 years later when one of the other daughters thinks she sees her sister on a kind of like really salacious Bravo reality TV show. And so this book is much more literary than Mother Daughter Murder Night, but similarly, and it's, where Mother Daughter Murder Night is about a Jewish family in California. This is about, a Latina family in Staten Island. But there is this same sense of this tough, raw, close knit family of women trying to figure out and trying to support each other. And also they're very funny. And there's a lot of those same kind of, not always simple family dynamics of women in this book. So while the style and tone is more literary, I feel like all of the Ramirez women in this book, maybe they could be distant cousins of Detective Ramirez in Mother Daughter Murder Night. And I could really imagine them coming together to go, solve some crimes and kick some butt along the way.
I feel like this book, and even now with this like addition of another random fictional character, is like the opposite of the sentiment like too many chefs.
Mm-hmm.
Like add more chefs, more complicated women. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. I'm like for all the complicated women. Yeah. And I'm really trying as a writer to get stronger and stronger at being able to write bigger ensembles because I've spent a lot of time playing sports or being in teams where it's not just two people or three people. It's 8 people working together on something. It's 50 people working together on something. And I don't feel yet that I'm skilled enough to do that. But some of my most favorite books have these huge ensemble casts. And I'm always fascinated by, wow, how did they pull that off? And how could I learn to do that too?
Well, you have to give yourself some credit, because throughout the book, I was writing little suspect lists, and then I would like kind of star who I thought it was at the time. And I feel like I kept being like, wait, there's that one person over there. They were kind of suspicious maybe because of this. And it kept switching around. So there was a lot of people to keep you guessing.
Yes.
And I feel like I don't know. I think you're good at that, but I understand wanting to always grow and improve. But I would say that's something you're already very strong at.
Thank you.
Speaking of teams, great segue, Deanna.
I can see it as well.
Psychic, everyone. Okay, so if your characters from Mother-Daughter Murder Night formed a sand volleyball team, I had to go there. Who would, kind of be the MVP, maybe the coach, or the one who's most likely to hit it out in the wrong court? Or where do you kind of see your characters playing in a sand volleyball team?
Yeah, so, sand volleyball is usually played 2-on-2. So you have a very intense, intimate relationship with your partner. And I think that, all the 3 women at the center of the story, the Rubicon women, it's really fun when you have 3 main characters, because there are all these different relationships that happen in the dyads. And a lot of the story is about, what does the grandmother-granddaughter relationship look like? And how does that relationship getting stronger impact the mother-daughter relationships and that kind of thing? So I think that any of the 2 of the 3 Rubicon women could be on the court with each other. I think that there's no question that Beth, who's the mom, would be the most solid. Jack, the teenager, would be the most willing to lay out and try for a crazy shot. And Lana would probably be critiquing everything everybody else was doing, while, either be refusing to get any sand on her in any way because she loves her beautiful clothes, or like casually just creaming everyone and crushing it. But if you think more broadly about the cast of Mother-Daughter Murder Night, I mean, of course, Paul, who owns the kayak shack, is the quintessential Tom Cruise in jean shorts playing volleyball, and, big talk, and probably his performance probably would not live up to the talk at all. And then I think also about some of the other characters who are involved in the book, both in a very small way, but also some of the characters who are involved in the mystery. I think of Diana Rhodes Whitaker, who is so beautifully put together, but I could really see her. She has college age kids. And, when I go play volleyball every once in a while at these tournaments, you'll see the moms who are like more intense about it than their children are, and they're dressed perfectly. So I think Diana would definitely be one of those people, and always under an umbrella because she does not want anything to mess up her beautiful skin. And then I also think about the detectives, because in Mother-Daughter Murder Night, you have a detective pair of this older guy, Nicoletti, and this younger woman, Ramirez. And Nicoletti's pretty much a misogynistic jerk. And so I think that he's the kind of guy who, rolls in talking big on the sand volleyball court, but then is losing his balance and getting sloppy. And I think of Ramirez, if anybody was going to be a shark, I think it would be Ramirez, in terms of just being focused, laser focused, and very capable, and always underestimated.
Mm-hmm. I 100% agree. I can picture it all so well. I feel like Lana especially would be so good at analyzing the other team's weaknesses. She's so observant and so ready to find those little details that I can see, like picking apart the team. Even if she wasn't playing, she would know exactly like where to hit them, where it hurts.
Yeah.
It's so funny. All right, so that brings us to our first game. If you want to play along with us, grab a piece of paper and something to write with. So this is kind of based, of course, on our childhood game of MASH, which I believe back then stood for like mansion, apartment, shack, house, or something like that. But how you can play along with us is by creating your own grid like this to find out which column of each you're going to end up with. And of course, here, this is 100% how Nina is going to be writing a sequel to this book, whether she wants to or not.
Absolutely.
obviously. So we're going to find out. I did kind of make up my own MASH letters for the beginning here, but I wanted to add a few more categories to kind of flesh out the story more. But for M, we've got our murder weapon. For A, atmosphere. S, suspects. H is our hidden clue. And then we've got to have a red herring. So if you're not familiar with mysteries or thrillers, that's kind of something that throws you off the trail. So that's one of those clues that didn't really lead to anywhere. And then some sort of resolution. And I kept a lot of this kind of vague and open-ended so that, you know, if you did really want to write a little short story, it could be a fun little exercise. And I am, of course, me. So there are Taylor Swift references in here. And there are 4. So if you want to add a game within your game, that's your game. All right.
And I know almost nothing about pop culture, so I will have no idea what those are, but I love this, and I love seeing how there are a few things in here that did make their way into Mother, Daughter, Murder Night, and there are a few things that I've been fantasizing about for other books as well.
Ooh, that's a good little Easter egg, because I did put some things inspired by the book and then some things personally inspired by you. So there's like a little bit of everything. That's funny. Okay, so how it will work is you're going to pick a number 1 through 5 if you're playing along, and Nina gets to pick the number. So what number 1 through 5?
4.
4. All right. So what I'll do is I'm going to go like snake pattern, I guess. You can do whatever you want because it's your game. But the goal would be like 1, 2, 3, 4, cross it out. 1, 2, 3, 4, cross it out. And just make sure that you're jumping around so you only have 1 left in each category. So give me a quick second for that. All right. 1, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Very riveting part of the stream right now. Almost there. 2, 3, 4. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. So your murder weapon today, Nina, is going to be the volleyball.
Yes. Okay. Excellent. Very hard to kill somebody with a volleyball, but I think there could be some kind of smothering action. Yeah.
It's not just that your serve is so hard.
I mean, you know, I can hit it pretty hard, but
Oh, can you imagine? That's terrible. But okay, they had to be a little bit goofy because murder is pretty intense, you guys. Obviously, tense was our mood of the month. And I was like, we need some really wild cards in here, like a rubber chicken, because if we're just talking about murder and death for an hour, it's going to get a little dark.
Rubber chicken seems very doable, by the way. Yeah.
I feel like it's easier than a volleyball.
I agree.
It's noisier, though.
Strangulation, choking. There's a lot of opportunities. Yeah.
It depends if it's got like the squeaker in it, you know?
Mm-hmm. Fair.
Your atmosphere is a touch to your past here. It's going to be set at an elegant museum gala.
Yeah, so I was a museum director for a long time, and actually when I started writing this book, I considered if I wanted to set it in a museum, and I was like, I'm not ready to drop a dead body there, which is one of the reasons why the book involves this fictitious land trust, that I wanted to explore some of the issues that I'd encountered around running a nonprofit, you know, some of those gray zones where it's like, what if the do-gooders weren't so good? But I didn't want to do it within the world of museum and art that I knew. But I definitely could imagine how to write a murder scene at a museum gala. I have seen all kinds of crimes actually committed at museum galas. I'll never forget this time. I mean, this actually could be quite sinister, but I was running a gala that had an auction, and this woman had bought an artwork for a lot of money, and she called very tearful the next day, and she was like, "Oh my God, I was so drunk. I shouldn't have done that. My husband's going to kill me when he sees the bill." And it was just this very awkward situation of, you know, her expressing a lot of distress, but also having made this choice during, I don't know. I don't drink a lot. I don't love it when people are out of control. And so I'm glad I don't go to many galas anymore, but I've seen people kiss other people's spouses on the dance floor, all that kind of stuff for sure.
Which is wild because it's such a public setting, but I feel like I mean, we see it a lot in, of course, fiction, but I feel like it stems from someplace real, is when people have this like enormous wealth and life of privilege, they almost get to this feeling of like thinking they're untouchable and they do things they shouldn't be
Yeah.
doing.
Well,
Yeah.
and the organizations are complicit in that they know that they'll raise more money if people are more drunk, which is a weird thing too. Like there's
Oh,
something
yeah.
that's very fun about it, but there's also something that's kind of gross about it. Anyway, that's why I haven't written that scene yet. But I could imagine how it could happen. Yeah.
Well, your suspect in this story here is the jilted lover.
Classic. Yeah. Yeah.
Classic. I mean, you've got to. Makes sense.
Well, and it's funny because the original motive for the murder in Mother-Daughter Murder Night, and I'll say this without spoiling, was much more abstract than the motive we ended up with in the end. And my agent really encouraged me. She really said, murder is personal. And yes, people do murder each other because they want to control something or, because of reasons that might be more abstract. But at the end of the day, if we're not talking about serial killers or psychopaths, if we're talking about regular people, it has to be something incredibly personal and emotional to drive you to do such an extraordinarily terrible thing. And so I think that a jilted lover situation is one of the most classic because there is so much deep emotion in that.
Mm-hmm. It's extremely, unfortunately, realistic for sure. Your hidden clue in this story is the cryptic note in a book. Go figure.
Yeah. May or may not be in Mother-Daughter Murder Night. Yeah. Yeah.
Possibly so. And for the last two, I would think it's so funny. Oh, am I back? Good to go.
Yep, we're good.
All right, just want to make sure. All right, so for our last two here, we really got some of the wild cards. So this would really test your skills as a writer to work these two last elements in. But your red herring is this overly suspicious butler.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Gala's butler. We've got some wealthy people going on, so I feel like you could do it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And the resolution somehow needs to include a sleepwalking neighbor.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right.
All right. So that's your sequel. You're welcome.
Okay. I haven't written it all down, but I know that you have it written down and I'm putting it in my head. And it's funny, I am working on another book, but it's actually not a sequel. I would love to write a sequel someday, and I actually have dreams of where I'd love to send Lana and Ramirez and Beth and Jack next. But I wrote Mother-Daughter Murder Night for such a personal reason for my mom while she was sick. And I think that, and we're so lucky that my mom's doing well right now. And I think there's a part of me that just feels like, oh, I want to let that sit and be the amazing, beautiful thing that it is. And I want to explore other stories, but definitely still playing around in the world of strong women, dead bodies, wild places, and having a lot of fun with that.
Makes sense to me. I will take consultation credits in the back of the book.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's go to a few more questions here. So the first one is, what elements of the novel were cut during the editing process? And I want to know what you were hinting at. So if we can put the little spoiler alert up and you can let me know.
We're talking about motive, or what are we talking about?
Your little element you were hinting at there during MASH you said there was something. I forget exactly what you said.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm sure we're going to talk about spoilers, so don't worry about it. But first I'll say one of the big surprises to me about the editing process is not a spoiler, is that for the most part, the book got longer through edits as opposed to shorter. So the book that I first submitted to my agent, or the person who became my agent, was about 75,000 words long. And the final book, as it got published, was about 105,000 words long. So the feedback I kept getting from my agent and my editor was, let's add more. Let's add more of the different women. Let's, so it's not just Lana's story. So it's Beth and Jack's story as well. Let's deepen the nature writing, because originally I didn't write a lot about Elkhorn Slough, the marine preserve, which was funny, because the reason I avoided doing that is I'm a big nature girl, and I was afraid that it was going to get too indulgent and too naturey. And so I intentionally wrote very little of that and mostly wrote about the slough from Lana's perspective, which is that the slough is gross and stinky and muddy. And as my editor was like, can we have more of the beauty part, please? And I was like, yes, I'm so ready to write more of that. But in terms of things that were cut, the motive for the murder got fundamentally changed. So the murderer was always the same, but why they killed became different. The whole ending confrontation between the murderer and the main characters changed. And here I will get very spoilery, so please do mute if you haven't finished it yet. But in the original version of the book, just Beth and Jack went up to the ranch to see just Martin, and Martin kidnapped them and took them down a creek. And then Lana and Paul kind of sneaked across the highway and found them in the creek. And like Lana whacked, Martin with a kayak paddle and knocked him into the water. And that was how the resolution happened. But and it was a great scene and very high tension and drama and fun. And, but as I kept working on the book, one of the things my editor really challenged me on is she said, we want this to be both a great murder mystery and a great family drama. And there needs to be arc and tension and resolution on both. And I realized that on the family side, this is really a story about, as you mentioned with the motto, 3 women who start from the position of I can do it myself, moving towards a position of more interdependence, not just to trust and respect each other, but to really be ready to rely on each other. And I realized that if Lana came in and saved the day and solved the mystery, then it reinforces the idea for her that she can do it herself. And so even though that scene was great and I loved it, I ended up cutting it, and I had this post-it where I wrote, Lana solves, Beth and Jack save, because I knew that the right kind of ending had to not only resolve the mystery, but had to also resolve this family tension and this question about independence and interdependence. So by having Lana solve the murder, figure out who it is, but then immediately get laid out on the floor by Martin, and then have Beth and Jack have to come save the day, meant that they could really be interwoven in supporting each other as a team to make this happen.
That makes perfect sense.
For a bunch of end scenes, how at the end there's always like the the postcard of what life looks like after. I wrote so many of those, Hannah. I wrote one where Lana and Victor went on a date. I wrote one where Lana and Paul went and smoked the last of the fruitful pot on a kayak. I wrote one where we went to Ramirez's ceremony where she became a full detective. Like I just wrote so many of those little pastiches, and I finally in the end ended up with the one that is at the end, which is where they go to the drive-in together, and where it's clear that Lana has chosen to stay, because I like that it bookended so well with the prologue, which is also about going to the drive-in. But I really miss, particularly the Lana and Paul smoking pot one was a really great and really fun one.
I actually think that I hope you have those saved somewhere or written down somewhere, because if this does ever get adapted, I would love to see those, like at the end of movies when it's like, and this character doing this and this. I need all of those in that like end scene. So
oh my gosh, and I've written so much Miss Gigi material that is like, I love Miss Gigi so much, but it's like a little goes a long way, and so I have to restrain myself from writing too much about her.
Speaking of maybe adaptations or things along those lines, I believe in the power of some manifestation. And I'm wondering, what is a moment that you hope happens in your career? So maybe there's something specific and small, maybe it's something you need to be a little more cryptic with, but I would be curious about what's a moment that you're still hoping for that happens one day.
I felt so blessed by this process so far. I mean, there's so many moments I feel so honored to have had, although I've got to say that the most important ones to me all relate to my mom, all relate to getting to share the process of creating this book with her, calling her every time something great happens, when the Reese pick happened, or when it got optioned for TV, or, any of those kinds of moments. And even now, as I'm working on book 2, I love sending what I'm working on to my mom and then talking with her and getting her feedback. And so I feel like that connection through this writing has been so just incredibly special to me. But a moment I hope happens in the future. Oh, you know what hasn't happened to me yet, which I can't believe because other people send me photos of this all the time. I want to see somebody reading the book in the wild. I have not seen this. I mean, people send me photos. Friends of mine are like, "Oh my God, I was on the, subway and blah, 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 blah." But I have not seen it. I would really like my dream. A great sadness to me was that Mother Daughter Murder Night did not get picked up by Hudson Booksellers, which runs most of the airport bookstores across the US, because I just really want to see my book in an airport or somebody holding the book. So that is a great thing of mine. Yeah. Yeah.
Speaking of which, do you have it's not out in paperback, right?
No, it will be out in September. Yeah.
Okay. So is there a possibility it could show up in airports then, or is the hardcover and like paperback tied together in that same like?
I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm hopeful, especially now that it's become a bestseller and all these kinds of things. But I have while I feel like I care a lot about being smart and thoughtful about the business side of things, I really enjoy that this is a profession where there are other people who are really focused on that. And sometimes good things happen, sometimes disappointing things happen, but it is not neither my responsibility, nor do I have any control over it at all. So I don't know.
Yeah, you can't control it all. And I mean, I feel like there are many other better uses of your time than getting into the weeds with that, for sure.
Yeah.
That's actually really funny that you said that, because just this morning I was watching a TikTok of Abby Jimenez, who is a romance author who in my brain is like so big, so incredible, so amazing. She just posted a TikTok of seeing a reader in the wild reading her book for the first time. And I'm like, maybe it's just because all of us like authors and readers, we don't get out much, but people are reading your books out there.
Right.
It was so cute. She her husband ran up to the reader and was like talking to her. And it turned out that the reader was deaf. So they had to like communicate through her phone. And it was just like, they were both like crying, like the reader and the author. And I was like, this is so cute and sweet and like such a special moment for both of them. So you have something in common with Abby, and I hope every author gets that moment. I think that's so cool.
Yeah. I hope so too.
So this one is kind of inspired in a weird way by myself, I guess I would say, for this last question. So I don't know if you know anything about Enneagrams, but I am an Enneagram number 3, which is often dubbed. Yeah. Can you tell?
I'm a 7 with an 8 wing, and I'm a big 7, actually, I would say, unsurprisingly. Yeah.
I love knowing people's like Enneagrams, their Myers-Briggs, all of it, because I feel like you learn how to like communicate with them.
Yeah.
And you learn a lot about yourself. And one thing I learned about myself is I am always focused on what's next. What can I do now? Growing, evolving, doing more. And I have a hard time of reflecting on all of the great things that I've already done. Like, okay, I achieved that more. And did I really take the time to like enjoy that and be like, wow, you did all of that? Not very often. So that's something that I'm working on. And I like to ask authors to do that as well, because I think you have contracts in these timelines and things, so you get stuck up in that cog of the wheel or whatever you want to call it. And I want to talk about, so we've talked about something you're manifesting for the future. What's a moment that you've already had? I know you've mentioned some with your mom, but maybe there's a specific instance that felt like a huge win, a moment that you're really proud of. And because I'm an aggressive millennial, this is the little gift that I had for the moment.
I don't know what this is, but okay, great. But
a little Hilary Duff, Lizzie McGuire moment.
Hilary Duff, yes. I'm on the cusp. I'm on the Gen X millennial cusp, so I'm a little pre Hilary Duff. I think really for me it has been about the incredible interactions I've had with readers. I kind of hoped that some readers would find the book entertaining, not just entertaining, but that, I really wrote this book during a very hard time as a way to kind of tunnel a little path towards joy when my mom and I were struggling so much. And I think that, and I really, as a reader during that time too, found myself turning to books for pleasure and for escape in this almost desperate way because things were so hard. And so I think that when I receive an email from a reader, and I get a lot of these emails, I get, I'm so lucky to get a few of them a week not just from people saying, I like the book, I look forward to reading your next one, but people saying it really helped me through a hard time, or I remember when I was caring for my parent or my spouse, or, I had somebody reach out to me this week who said, I just got out of surgery and I was feeling stressed and bad for myself. But then I read this book and I read about Lana, and she's so tenacious and feisty. And I can be that and I can do anything. And I feel like it's such an honor. And especially, when we were talking about mottos, my life really changed when my mom got sick. I used to be extremely work focused and extremely focused on nonprofit work and on what I considered to be high impact work. And I had strong judgments in my mind about what was high impact and what was not. And definitely entertainment was very far from what I considered to be high impact. But what I've seen both from my own life as a consumer of entertainment and now as a creator is just like, when we are in really hard times, yes, we need the kind of structural support that comes from nonprofits and from people who are working to change the world. But we also need to laugh and to smile and to feel that warmth. And I just have really come to value the opportunity to work in that space. And then I feel like it's a huge win when I hear from somebody for whom Mother Daughter Murder Night has been that kind of story.
I think that shows just like the power of your writing, because you look at like the cover of the synopsis, you're like, okay, like it's a murder mystery thriller.
Sure.
But like the fact that you're able to write such strong family characters that have these connections and they have such depth, I think as someone who reads a fair amount of, things in this genre, that's not something you always see, which, to be fair, there's still great stories without it. Yeah. But that's probably not something a lot of thriller or mystery authors can say, that, people have connected with their characters in such a way. So that is a huge moment to be proud of.
Yes.
That is really, really
well, maybe, I wonder about that, because like I'm a huge fan of Louise Penny, who writes these cozy mysteries that I feel like bring a lot of warmth. Or like, I grabbed this book off the shelf, Dial A for Aunties by Jessie Q. Sutanto, which is a book that absolutely made me laugh out loud in the hospital waiting room while waiting for my mom. And so I think that murder can be a comfort. You're right that not all is. And I definitely also love reading some pretty dark noir and things like that. That definitely is not comforting. But I think that one of the things that's beautiful about traditional murder mysteries like Mother Daughter Murder Night is it's not like everybody's living in a perfect fairy tale world, but they're living in a world in these books where something terrible happens, and then the detective or the detectives, through their thoughtfulness and their attention, solve it and bring it to full resolution. And I think that there's so rarely in our regular lives that we get full resolution. Things happen for reasons we can't understand. We never find out why. And we just have to deal with it, and it's terrible. And I think that in a book like this, there's huge comfort in this idea, not that it's like no terrible things will ever happen, but this idea that when something terrible happens, we can come together as a community, we can figure it out, we can find justice, and we can move on. And I at least find that incredibly comforting.
This is why you're the writer. I was like, I don't know. I was speechless over here. I was like, that all makes sense. All right. Next, we've got one more game. Let's moving on to some Mad Libs here. Okay. So I am going to write a terrible story that is definitely assisted by ChatGPT, because I'm not the writer. But I added some of my own twists and turns in here, and I want your help and the audience's help to write the story here. So I am going to ask for some different pieces here in the story, and then we will put it all together. So I'm going to stop screen sharing for a second just so I can share audience comments as well. Great. Let's see, starting with, give me 1 second. Let's start with the family's last name. So if you got answers to, Nina, we can go for those too. So we can do a bit of both you and audience. Let's see. All right, last name, and then we're going to need names for, of course, the grandma, the mom, and the daughter.
So are you asking me, or are you asking people out there to send stuff in?
Let's have them come up with the last name, and then you come up with the first names.
Okay.
How's that sound?
Okay.
All right, so give us, chat can give us the last name, and we'll have Nina do the first names. All right. While you guys are coming up with the last name, I will have you give me a noun, Nina.
Potato.
All right, you're ready. An adjective.
Careful.
Okay. Let's see. Another adjective.
Shiny.
All right. And we're going to go for 4 nouns.
Popsicle.
Mm-hmm.
Frog.
I was like, these are all going to be food.
Grass. And clock.
Okay. All right. We are getting some last name suggestions. I knew it was going to happen. Someone was going to say Swift. And we've got a self-indulgent member as well, choosing their own last name. I see what you're doing there, and that is very funny. I would have probably done the same. Let's go with Pablo because we already have some Taylor Swift references today. All right. Do we have our character names as well, Nina?
Yeah, let's go for Daniela.
Is she grandma?
You can choose.
Okay.
Okay, I've got Daniela. I've got Peanut. And Francie.
Okay. I think it makes sense. Grandma, Francie.
Right.
Mom, Daniela. Daughter, Peanut, as a little nickname. All right. Let me see how well I can read this story. I feel like it is going to be a little bit tricky. So, like I said, my first time trying this. All right. Let's pop it on screen again. All right. Once upon a time, in a careful coastal town, there lived 3 generations of the Pablo family. We've got Grandma Francie, her daughter Daniela, and Daniela's daughter Peanut. They were known for their love of potatoes, and knack for solving mysteries. One shiny afternoon, after a game of popsicle, Daniela stumbled upon something strange buried in we'll go grass, so it makes sense. It was an old map with mysterious markings. Excited by the discovery, Grandma Francie declared, "This looks like the beginning of an epic adventure, my dears. Let's follow this map and see where it leads us." With determination in their hearts, the Pablo women set off on their quest. Along the way, they encountered clues at every turn: a torn piece of clock, a cryptic message on a frog, and a mysterious note left behind. There's always a mysterious note. Determined to crack the case, they used their wit and charm to decipher the clues. With Grandma Francie's sharp mind, Daniela's keen eye for detail, and Peanut's fearless spirit, they pieced together the mystery. As they delved deeper, they uncovered a hidden secret that someone was desperate to keep buried. But the Pablo women were not deterred. With courage and determination, they confronted the truth head on. In the end, they emerged victorious, their bond stronger than ever. As they basked in their success, they knew that no mystery was too daunting as long as they had each other. So, with hearts full of adventure, the Pablo family returned home, ready to embark on their next escapade. That wasn't too bad.
Nice. Yeah.
I mean, I'm a little bit curious how the frog part's gonna work, but I imagine like a frog with like, I hear they like swallow things. I think maybe that's just because I've seen Practical Magic too many times. But maybe the frog could have swallowed like a little note or a little clue, like a ring.
Yeah, could be. Sure, absolutely.
It happened. Stranger things have happened, right? All right, so I have a couple more questions for you that are easy and fun, and then we are gonna start audience questions.
Great.
So start thinking of your questions and leaving them in the chat so that we can get to those as well. All right, so this first question is 110% inspired by you, Nina, because when we met at the Tucson Festival of Books, on the spot, as I'm someone who likes to compare, as you can tell, she was like, all right, we're gonna turn the tables here. Well, how much? And she was like, we are all going to interview you. So all 3 authors from my panel started asking me questions for a video, which you need to send me at some point.
Yeah.
But now I'm going to let you put me in the hot seat yet again, because like I said, this isn't your typical author interview. So what do you want to ask me today? No holds barred.
Yeah, I'm curious how your reading has changed as you have become, and I don't mean in terms of the books you select, but I mean when
Uh-huh.
you actually sit down to read a book, do you feel that you're reading differently than you did when you were just a strictly casual or personal reader? I know my reading has changed a lot now that I'm writing, and I'm curious what that looks like for you.
That's actually a really good question. I didn't know she was going to ask this. So I was like, we're just going to wing it. So, I mean, I started my accounts in 2020. I started this book club original in 2018. So, I mean, I've been doing a lot of different phases of a reader. And I would say in this last year, I'm in my like professional era where I'm trying to
Mhm.
like make money, of course, after doing these accounts and like make brand partnerships and collaborations. So, of course, sometimes there are things that are going to be financially motivated. So I don't like to do like an ad or a sponsorship if I haven't read the book. Like, I just think it's
Mhm.
disingenuous. I want to be able to talk about it naturally. I don't ever want to interview an author or meet someone without having, read their book if I can help it. So that's definitely a huge motivator is like events and things that I'm planning for. Like right now, I'm going to another book
Mhm.
festival. So I'm going to pull a
Mm.
stack of those books. But that being said, like festivals in particular, there's a lot of authors. So I still get to
Mhm.
kind of pick and choose what I'm interested in. And I mean, I have this kind of like internal battle all of the time where I'm like, I want to read things that are out of my comfort zone because I think it's
Mhm.
important for personal growth.
Yes.
But I also want to read what I love.
Mhm.
So like that is kind of like my battle as the mood reader.
Yeah.
I will say I gravitate the most towards romance and thrillers.
Mm.
And I always say it becomes this little sandwich because I love romance, but after so many people falling in love, I just need someone to get murdered. I can't like I get suffocated by the love. Whereas like on the flip side, if I read too much stabby books in a row, I'm like, Jesus, doesn't anyone love each other anymore? Like
Yes,
I can't
yes.
do it.
That's
So
so
I don't
funny.
know. There's a bit of both. I
That's
mean,
why I
that's
love so are you a fan of Ashley Winstead? Because I feel like she's a rare author who writes both, like, very stabby
mhm.
thrillers and really sweet, fun rom-coms, and I'm so impressed by her in that regard, yeah.
Yeah, she's actually one who's going to be at the LA Times Festival of Books. So I've
Nice,
got a couple
yes.
of books to prioritize. But yeah,
Good.
I don't know. It's kind of a thing that's like a very long, complicated answer for sure,
Sure,
and it's always
sure.
changing. But I am very adamant about like even if I'm sponsored or like get a book gifted by a publisher or someone like all my reviews like I don't just say nice things because I have to. If I'm
Yeah.
going to say something nice about a book, I feel it, and I am a positive person, so usually if I have a lot of negative feelings about a book, I just don't say too much about it.
Yeah,
And that's kind of that. Unless it's problematic, then that's a different story. But
yeah, yeah.
all right. My last little question here for you is what is something you want to ask or tell readers? I feel like, since we're turning the tables here, what's something you wish your readers would know or readers in general?
Uh, I don't well, no, I'm very curious to hear I'm always love to hear from readers and what questions they have. I guess one thing I've definitely learned is that anytime you feel like a book was not edited, let me tell you, it was edited. Like there are so many rounds of edits on these books. They may have been edited in a direction you didn't enjoy, and I've definitely had that experience as a reader, but I can promise you that no book published by a big publisher was not edited many, many, many times. But I'm curious, I know we only have a little bit of time, so I'd love to hear what questions are on people's mind.
Yes. Let me stop sharing that 1 second here. And we are going to pop over to some audience Q&A. I got some on, like I said, we have a guess the character game that we'll play later on Instagram stories. So if you're really excited about that, don't stress. We will play that on stories. But I do have some questions from our Instagram. Let's see here. All right, I just had to skip through the game slides. You guys didn't want to see the answers, so I had to pop off screen for a sec. All right, so I knew it was coming. Julie wants to know, have you or will you meet Reese. And of course, we're talking about
Yeah,
Reese Witherspoon, the one and only, because of course, this book is a Reese's Book Club pick.
sure. I have not met Reese. I've met many wonderful people from the Hello Sunshine team, and I don't know that I will because this book did get optioned for TV, but not by Hello Sunshine, by a different producer. So, which is kind of unusual because a lot of these book clubs, there's often a connection between the optioning and the book club, but in this case, it's a different producer. So, I love the Hello Sunshine people. I super appreciate Reese and what she's doing for authors and readers everywhere. But don't know if I'll ever get to meet her. Definitely right before the announcement came out, we watched Legally Blonde at home because my daughter, who was 10, had no idea who this person was. And I was like, we got to find out who this person is so that you are excited about this too. So that was fun.
Yes, you need Reese is legendary. And I mean, I also heard recently, side note, that there's going to be a Legally Blonde like spin-off. I think it's a show. I think it's like a new
That
cast
makes
too.
sense. Yeah, it'd be a great show.
So cool. Katie asked, so Bookish Kate 517, one of my besties, asked a question that I always ask authors, which is why I didn't even bother putting it on screen because I saw that she asked it as well. But since I'm not a writer, I love to ask authors what books they recommend. And since this is a new series, I wanted to put a little twist on this question for myself.
Okay.
So whatever you recommend after the stream, I literally have to go buy it or request it from the library and read it next week.
Okay, well then I'm going to give you 3. 2 you already heard about, but I came prepared. So I mentioned What Happened to Ruthie Ramirez, Claire Jimenez. This book is amazing. It is literary. It is powerful. And it's short too, if you're somebody who likes short novels. I will say it's a kind of mystery that does not all wrap up in a bow. So if that's important to you, you might be frustrated. But it's very real and it's very wonderful. And the characterization is incredible. I also mentioned Dial A for Aunties. Is it a rom-com? Is it a murder mystery? Is it a family drama? I don't know. It's all these things, and it's super fun. I like to think of it like Weekend at Bernie's meets Crazy Rich Asians, and Jessie Q. Sutanto is just incredible, and I love her, and this book really is just a mountain of joy. I also just shared this book on audio with my 10-year-old, and we had a lot of fun listening to it together. The rom-com stuff is a little steamy, but it does not get high spice. And then the third book, and I imagine that there may be many women here, but maybe some guys. This is a book for the football lover in your life. This book, Don't Know Tough, is an incredible book. It won the Edgar Award last year. It is a noir mystery that takes place in the world of Arkansas high school football. Eli Craner, who wrote it, was himself a pro footballer and a high school and coach in Arkansas. It is very Southern. It is very dark, and is just an incredible book for somebody who loved Friday Night Lights but wants a little more murder in their life. Yeah, and I mean, I as a woman loved it, but I think also, a lot of books that I read and that I love to write feature strong women, and this is a book that really is in a very toxically masculine world that I highly recommend.
Intriguing. I like how different they are. They've got like elements of like, if you loved this, you'll love one of those, but in different ways, which is cool. Let's jump to a different book club member here. Nifty Reads wants to know, will we see these characters again? You kind of like sort of hinted at that, but if there's anything you want to expand on there.
I mean, maybe. I love reading series, but I also know that when I read series, if the author writes a book outside the series, I'm really pissed at them because I want more with those characters. And I think since this was my first novel, I wasn't ready to sign up for like a book a year with these characters. And also I mentioned, because Lana's so rooted from my deep love of my mom, I think I love writing and talking about Lana while my mom is doing well. But if things were different, I'm not sure how I'd feel. That said, it has been optioned for TV. So my current dream is that we get to see Lana and Beth and Jack and Detective Ramirez continue their adventures on screen. And I get to write books featuring other strong women in other situations. And we'll see what happens. So for me, it's not a no. And I hope to see the characters again, whether I will be writing them or whether they will be, showing up in a different format. We'll see.
Let's see. Last chance for a final audience question for the live stream. Drop them there. I'm coming up with one on the spot. Your answer right now actually just made me think of this. I am wondering, so if it gets adapted, all goes well, and they're like, Nina, you get to have an author cameo. What kind of
Mhm.
scene would you love? Because I love looking for author cameos. I love adaptations, and I feel like
Oh,
you need
so
to do this so
interesting. I mean, well, okay, an obvious one would be paddleboarding by, which is something,
yes,
I
I
do
could
all the time. But I'd also, I feel like being at one of the taquerias, eating a delicious burrito in the background, that would be great. And yeah, running on one of the beautiful trails out there by what's going on. Also my family, we're all big cyclists, and there's kind of some jokes about biking in the book, which none of the women really think is a great. I guess Jack the teenager bikes, but Lana and Beth do not think biking is a great idea. And so I could definitely see my husband having a cameo with my daughter on the back in the tandem, biking along Highway 1 as they often are. So yeah, I think probably doing something active. And it'll be so fascinating to see, with an adaptation, nobody knows, would they still base it in the Monterey Bay? Would it even be, a grandma, a mom, and a teenager? What they really train you on when your book gets optioned is like, you have no idea what's going to happen. It could turn out to be a mini series about frogs on Mars, but it's in some way based. So we really don't know what's going to happen. That said, there is a somebody who's signed on to play Lana, which I'm super excited about, and I can't say who it is, but she's a big deal, and you will be excited. And we have a writer attached, and so things are moving along, and we'll see what happens. More mystery, more intrigue. Yeah. You can send me your guesses later, and I'm happy to tell you on DM. But yes.
I personally would really hope to bring back the whole deathly volleyball spike as your cameo, just in the background, just like hitting it. And
Yeah.
you see, like in the background, sometimes the extras are doing something really weird. I just want to see the person like, boom.
Yes, yeah, could happen, Although there's not a lot of volleyball down right at that beach, but they could take a trip up to Santa Cruz. Yeah.
No, that would be so cute. I'm manifesting this all for you as well. And I'm just so glad that, although this book was incredibly tense and stressful and just very rewarding in general and a very fun read, that you are not tense and stressful and you're an absolute delight. I'm so glad that we got to hang out again and, that we get to just keep connecting like this.
Yeah.
This
Well,
has
and
been
absolutely,
so
please, I love hearing from readers. It's really easy to find me online, but please do connect with me. I'm Nina K. Simon. Connect with Hannah, absolutely. And writing is a lonely process, and so getting to talk to readers, getting to connect with readers is such a special opportunity that I just love. So yeah, thank you.
Yes. Well, yes, definitely 100% look down in the video description, no matter when you're watching this, even if you're watching it in the future. Her Instagram is linked down there, all the places you can shop the book and, add it to your list. Like I said, all of those things really, really help authors. They're super important and super helpful. Also, just sharing it to your stories and things like that, even if you're reading from the library or doing an audiobook, like all of that is helpful. So make sure to tag Nina. Maybe you're reading it when the paperback comes out. That would be cool. Tag us and comment down below if you watched it and you made it to the end of this video. We'll do a secret emoji. So put 2 or 3 secret emoji faces inspired by mood reading and these fun little faces that I added on screen. Put your favorite 3 emojis down below if you made it this far. And Nina, thank you for hanging out once again. You're not getting rid of me yet, but goodbye for now.
All right. Great to see
Bye,
you.
Nina.
Thank you.